Morning. Thank you for joining us for the Learning Futures Collaboratives Kickoff event. This, as you will find out, this is the first among a series of events that will be happening to culminate in a series of projects in summer. More details coming soon. We are recording this event, so those of you who might have to leave a little early, this will be available. Those of our colleagues who could not make it for one reason or the other will have that available as well. Claire, if you could go to the next slide, thank you. So this is one of my, become increasingly one of my favorite quotes about education, which is that the process of education is not a natural phenomenon. It is not one of the givens in our universe. It is made up by us, designed to serve our purposes, meet our needs. And it's not I'm not sure I agree entirely with that statement, that it's not in need of research to find out how it works, but I do agree with the last part that it is in need of creative invention to make it better. So in some ways, the idea of the Learning Futures Collaboratives or the Learning Futures Initiative broadly within the Teachers College, is meant to serve a few needs. If we look at, education is always about the future, whether, how we think, it is preparing the next generation of children, learners for what the future will be. We live in times which are incredibly transformative, precarious, irrespective of COVID or whatever. We can see there are dramatic changes happening, whether due to global warming, issues of sustainability, changes in technology, increased polarization, and the rise of authoritarianism, and what have you, right? So within that context, thinking about how we can look at the work that we do as researchers and scholars to think of the future of education. And if we can go to the next slide. So and this is something that came out of conversations with Carol and Betty and Iveta and the vice deans. And thank you to all those who joined in for a couple of focus groups at the end of last semester to help us think this through. So one of the things that has become very clear to us in conversations with our faculty and our doctoral students is that we often do not have opportunities for these scholarly conversations. And if I just speaking for myself, one of the reasons why we are in this space in higher ed is to sort of engage with this world of ideas. And we often, due to a variety of reasons, partly because MLFTC spread over 3 campuses, partly because of COVID, we don't get enough opportunities to do that. So I think these events should be seen in that context as well. Also, that it is driven by the sort of future-facing focus. And one of the things when you try to find collaborative teams, the question becomes, this is my area of expertise. Do I have to change? The answer in this case is no, that you could bring your expertise, your knowledge to a particular question, but it's the conversations that we have together that can be greater than the sum of its parts. And the idea here is to develop big questions or challenges, opportunities to work collaboratively, to investigate interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary questions. It also seeks, and one of the things, again, we have heard from all of you, that the excellent work that all of you do doesn't necessarily get the visibility that it deserves. So as a part of that, so thinking about how we can take this work, make it more visible through the web, through social media, through podcasts. I don't know how many of you are subscribed to the Learning Futures podcast. It's onto its 3rd season now. I really recommend, you can find it on any of your podcast apps. Really recommend that you sign up for it, because it's a great podcast. It really is. Ron Bagetto, Claren and others have worked really hard to make that. We're also, have a whole series that we are partnered with Cronkite around writing for wider audiences. We'll tell you more about that. And finally, I want to say this is, what Carol said, that this is the ASU thing to do, that we don't work in our silos, we work within, we work across. And so this is sort of an attempt to make that happen in a more organized and structured way, and yet open-ended and free-flowing. In brief, the idea would be over time to develop these teams of faculty and doctoral students who work around these big questions and challenges, which are emergent based on their area of expertise, but at some level greater than that, and supported through some internal funding, through help with grant writing, building a web presence, social media, so on and so forth. briefly, this would, we can talk more about the events towards the end, but see this as a series of events which will help sort of grow and develop this over time, with funding to kick in the summer of this year. At this point, I would love to invite Betty and Iveta if there's anything that they want to add to what I just said. And Carol, I don't know if Carol is here. I would love for her, before we jump in, Clarence, to you, for her to say a few words as well. So Betty, Iveta, please.
So I'll just jump in and add, I think Punya gave a great overview. One of the other things we've heard from all of you is that when we do have meetings like this, too often it's people talking at you rather than giving you a chance to interact. And so we've designed our gathering today to be very much an opportunity for you to talk to each other, share what you're doing, and to generate ideas that are forward-looking. So all of us are really looking forward to hearing what you have to say and learning more about what you're doing. So that's my 2 cents. Iveta, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just really briefly. Also, as we were thinking about this initiative, we also wanted to, as Betty said, to really deeply rooted in what we all do as faculty here, but at the same time also connected to kind of the bigger conversations that are happening both at ASU and also on a global scale as well. So we really hope that this Learning Futures initiative can help us link better to other conversations, similar conversations that are happening at ASU, including in the Global Futures Lab, but also other units, and also link us, kind of plug us into the global conversations around similar themes, including, for example, the UNESCO's Futures of Education initiative that has been going on for the last 2 years and just recently culminated in a report that we hope to also actually are planning to discuss together in February. So February 14th, we're planning an event with some of the colleagues from the UNESCO's Futures of Education initiative around their work, and they specifically looked at the futures in terms of teacher workforce, environmental sustainability, and technology, artificial intelligence, just to name a few topics, right? But with a horizon of 2050. So I'll stop here, but just another plug in to say that we hope it's as much rooted in our all, very local interests, but also connected to some of the global conversations.
Thank you, Iveta. Carol, do you want to say a few words?
So it's really interesting. I just got off listening to Michael Crow talk about our new economy initiative, and I'm sure that will come out to everyone. It was a great conversation. It's very, very interesting. And most of that, right, is how do you build the world's best engineering school? And, and you can't, and all the science and all the things that are going on right now, as we think about, the economy and the change and all, the workforce and how it's going to change. And you can't help but sit there and think about the fact that our education system hasn't changed in 100 years. So, or longer. So it is really going to be imperative, I think, for us to think about these learning future collaboratives as ways to, one, create a different kind of knowledge enterprise, right? So we all have academic homes. I see this really as in some ways creating a knowledge home, a research home for folks to really think about the big questions, the big things that as we look out and we look at what's happening, how do we in education build a very different kind of research knowledge enterprise for education? How do we amplify and enhance the work that we are doing by working with others, often not in our own discipline, and enhancing our own professional networks within the college, across ASU, nationally and internationally, as Iveta just said, increasing the visibility for our research, which I think we need to do. I think it sits sometimes too hidden, even on our website or whatever. I think there are ways of increasing the visibility for our own research when we begin to work with others in some really interdisciplinary and future forward thinking kinds of ways, both nationally and globally. And of course, increasing the number of collaborative grants and publications and all the kinds of products that help us to build on that work. And so I really do hope this is the beginning of something that is big, that is different, that looks different than other colleges of education. These are not centers per se. These are more flexible, they're more nimble. But I think that I'm hoping, right, that this helps us to get to some of these really big questions that are really daunting education right now, and seeing what we can do and how we can figure it out, and how it not only drives research, but also drives practice. So thank you all for being here. I think it's tremendous. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this. I'm very, very excited about this initiative. Thanks, Punya.
Thank you, Carol. Karen, I think you didn't have to shut us off at 9:15. We actually finished at 9:13. So it's yours to take away.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure catch up with our agenda and our time here in a minute. So for those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Clarin Collins. I'm the Director of Scholarly Initiatives. And broadly speaking, I do my best to provide support for research, primarily with faculty, but also as many opportunities with doctoral students as well. So thank you, especially for all the doc students who have joined us today. So I'm going to briefly walk us through the agenda and our first activity, but really excited to have you all have the opportunity to connect with people. And we're going to have 2 different breakout sessions, so you will get to meet several different people. So ideally, that is what we're looking for, more connections today. So we're going to have a breakout session right away here, and then we're followed up by a gallery walk. We're going to repeat the event with one slight change to the outcome. And then Betty will help us kind of go through our last gallery walk and debrief from today. And then we will close with a reminder or some updates on the events that were mentioned in the beginning, and ways to keep this momentum and conversation going. Oops. So I am going to briefly explain this and hopefully do a decent enough job, but thank you to all of the faculty and doc students who volunteered to be your facilitators today. We are ideally going to have groups of 4. The facilitators will be assigned rooms, and then the rest of you will be randomly distributed. And ideally between session 1 and 2, you will meet other people. So what we're going to do is have you get into different breakout rooms. And before you verbally introduce yourself, we're going to have you follow these 2 simple prompts. We want to know and share with each other your research interests, but in order to make this as accessible as possible, we'd like you to do this with as little bit of jargon as possible. So you're going to write down 2 to 3 keywords or phrases to describe your research, and then complete one of the following statements in 10 words or less. Betty, Punya, and Iveta were our examples. So I have their bullets up here for their areas of expertise or keywords within their research, and then their statements. And each document that each group is going to have will have these in there as well. So you can kind of mirror and replace their words with your own. So you can see here that they have their 3 keywords, and then they've completed their statements. So what you're going to do is, once everybody does that, you will go around and introduce yourselves. Again, I'm hoping that that is a way to more easily understand each other's research without getting caught in long-winded descriptions and details that aren't needed for today's activity, but still give you enough of an overview of what everyone does. Additionally, the beauty of having this information in Google Docs is that we can share that and use it to help support you, make connections, network, etc. So all of this information is going to be very valuable. So the next activity is, after you introduce yourselves and go around the group, you're going to pick a keyword or phrase, ideally from each person. If there's groups of 4, each person will select one of their keywords or phrases, and they're going to plot them on an axis. Now, don't get worried if you're not into quantitative methodologies. This is not getting statistical, but visually you have this axis. And so we put one of the examples, one of the keywords from each Iveta, Punya, and Betty around this axis. And the activity, and where most of this conversation and coming up with new questions and ideas, will come from this conversation you have with your group. So you're going to flesh out between each of these points on the axis. So right now we're looking here, for example, at education by design. ecofeminism and sustainability. What does this look like? What questions might we have? Do we have any ideas? Have we ever even thought about these two ideas of research together in the same conversation? So you're just going to go around as an entire group. So even if neither of these are your areas of expertise, what questions do you have? Do you know what they even mean? So this will lead, I'm sure, to some very interesting conversations within your group. So you'll continue to go all the way around the matrix, fleshing these all out. And then at the end, you're going to step back and look at those questions. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second because I think, Henry, are you sharing the links yet? Not quite yet. I'm going to share my screen one more time on a different document. So once you step back from that, you're going to look at that entire matrix as a whole. And you're going to think of, okay, now what question is most interesting? What do we really want to keep talking about? And you're going to share those out on your group assigned slides. 1 second here. Am I still sharing my screen?
No.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. All right. So we're going to put you in groups of 4. I'm stuck in my own PowerPoint. I can't get out. Oh my gosh, you guys, I apologize. I'm seriously stuck. I can't get out of my computer.
And open up the breakout rooms, just so everyone knows there's only going to
Great.
be 2 that have 5. Actually,
Okay.
just 1 now. Okay,
And we have the right numbers for a facilitator for each one.
that's right, we do.
That is ideal. Okay, so the facilitators, as we are assigning you out, you'll get your breakout room, and each of you has a Google Doc that will be linked to that particular group that you are assigned. It's a letter. And so when you're looking at that matrix, again, your facilitators have had a little bit more of a prep on this, and you're looking at the different ideas that flesh out around your matrix, you're going to share out at the end of this half hour, ideally 1 to 3 ideas that you either have questions, like a larger question that you want to discuss or think is interesting as a group, and you're going to share it out on your group assigned slide. And if it hasn't been shared yet in the chat, everyone is going to have access to the slide deck. This is kind of like our working note, our working document that we will all be able to see and share and have access to. Going to share my screen here, but I'm not putting it in. Oops, yeah, we got to stop sharing the music, Henry, so I can do this. Okay. So we are going to get into our second breakout activity, and I'm going to, oh wow, this is some very small font. Here we go. Okay, so we're essentially going to repeat what we just did with new groups. So we're still going to break you out into breakout rooms. This time you won't have to count the letters and the numbers. It's just going to be a breakout group number that you'll be in with a facilitator again. You'll go through the same introduction process using another Google Doc. And the difference this time is that when you go through that matrix activity and you're thinking about the big ideas, maybe you pick only 1 or 2 this time. But what you're going to be doing, instead of finding a unique brand new slide for your group, we want you to find a slide from the first breakout session where your idea relates, or maybe it completely opposes the idea or thought or question on that slide. And you're adding your ideas or questions to that slide. So for example, I might have used group 7, Steve. This is the content from the first breakout group. So you're going to go back to the original slides, but now you're adding your group's number and names here. And you're saying, okay, here's one idea or question we had. And this connects to number 2 on this slide because, so you're connecting your idea or your thought with one on a slide. And in theory, you could be making comments or connections on multiple slides because of just the vast amount of things you guys came up with. This could get messy because of the space on slides. So then feel free to add down here in speaker notes. So add your content wherever you can, but just make sure you put your names there so we can kind of know and help have this data afterwards. So if we know that people who were involved with group 4 and the second breakout had an idea that related to the people that were in group G from the first, we can kind of make those connections. And if we haven't said it in the full group, everyone is going to have access to this slide deck afterwards, the Google Docs, because there's so much information on these, we don't want to lose that. So everybody feel ready to go round 2. We're going to have another half hour, but the part that will hopefully be a little quicker will be your introductions, because you'll already have gone through that process once with a different set of people, because it will take a little bit more thought and time to take your share out idea and map that onto a slide from the first breakout session.
And those slides we return to are numbers 15 through 25, is that right?
I believe so, yes. 25 was the last one with group K. And looks like 14. Nope, 15, you're right, Eugene, if that was you. Okay. So Henry is going to help us get back into new breakout rooms. Thank you. There's again the link for your new Google Docs for this breakout session 2. Welcome back. Was it? Woo, that was a big one, huh? All right. So as everybody is coming back, we're going to give you some time just to look through, as you've probably been looking through, but catch your breath. And it's pretty. This is a lot of information. I can't imagine the number of potential studies that could be designed off of everyone's ideas here. But our thought with this gallery walk, and I do realize that these slides are getting congested a bit, but which is awesome, would be if there's something that you're looking at maybe as an individual now, you're kind of separated out of your groups that you find interesting and you like, why don't you add your name to in the speaker notes section below in the slides? And again, if anyone needs this, I can drop this link again in the chat. You're not signing up for anything, you're not committing, but if there's an idea that resonates, again, this is all data that we can kind of try to use, and as staff or leaders that support your work, think of ways that we can continue to facilitate these conversations and ideas. So as individuals now removed from your breakout groups, just look through these, and if there's something that resonates with you, feel free to include a note making that connection. Don't just sign your name on a slide, like make the connection, what resonates with you. And we'll have that information. So we'll take a few minutes to do this, and then Patty is going to kind of help us debrief and think about what we do from here.
And I'm just going to jump in and say, Clarin and Prunia, in my last group, my internet connection was really going crazy. So in the event that I get kicked out, I've got these questions here on the slide, and I'll just say this while people are coming back and looking at the different slides. What we'd really love to hear from you, and you can put this in the chat here in Zoom, because we'll also save the chat, I hope, Henry and Clarin. What we'd like to hear from you are some brief comments about the ideas, thanks, Henry, topics, conversations that really most interested you, that you found exciting, compelling, that energized you. Also, anything that you want to know more about. Were there, of these ideas, conversations, etc., what do you want to learn more about? You know, what, again, intrigued you to want to take that next step? And related more concretely to the Learning Futures collaboratives, what can you suggest as opportunities for continuing to cultivate new collaborations or shared goals? This is just a preliminary step. Are there other ways that you can suggest to us that we can support continuing these kinds of conversations and building them out into more sustainable working relationships, collaborations that can ultimately form these learning futures collaboratories. And as you're doing that, if anyone would like to jump in and share some of those ideas verbally, that would also be great too. So we're asking you to do quite a few things. It's post on the slides, post in the chat here, and also if you'd care to volunteer by sharing some things. So we'll kick that off in about 5 minutes, but I wanted to get that in case I got kicked out. So, and I didn't, which is great. Okay, folks, it's 10:40. So it's officially time for our debrief session, although I already overviewed the instructions. If you're like me, it's going to be hard to take yourself away from looking at the slides and everyone's comments and everyone's individual commitments or interests. So let me try to bring you back to the group. And again, ask you to comment on in the chat or verbally. So what most interested you, excited you, caught your attention in your conversations and the activity today? It can be an idea, an aspect of the group. So give us some of your thoughts and feedback. What really stood out for you? And again, you can post in the chat or verbally.
This is Linda Neff. I'm a graduate student, but something that stood out for me was, all the different contexts and ways that we could potentially collaborate across K-12, community college, and four-year institutions on some of these different topics. And I'm really intrigued by bringing in community-based learning into some sort of professional development thing.
Great, thanks. Yeah, topic near and dear to my heart since I've done a lot of work with community-based organizations. But yes, that I noticed that too. That was really exciting and something I think for us to think about as we build the Learning Futures collaboratives. How do we really pull people in from across these organizations and settings? So yeah, thank you. Other comments or?
I'll follow up on that just a minute as even a more plug to do it at a college level is that bringing communities and finding folks is a challenge. And it's a work that I think a lot of us are doing individually because of the project or in our small research groups. But I think that seeing the frequency that people are talking about bringing in communities and culture responsive education, and I think that and how that I could see that really being supported at a college level to facilitate a lot of different projects and give individuals more time to focus on other things because it's a big lift. And so it would be great to get department-wide support on it.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, great suggestion. And as you were talking too, I was thinking as well, that would also help create sustainable relationships, because I think one problem we often face is we get a grant or we get a project and we collaborate briefly and then we leave, sadly, and I don't think that's a way to really create effective change, nor to really show that we value those partnerships. So great idea. Yeah. Other thoughts, comments?
I'll go ahead. This is Anne. I think a lot of us may benefit from continuing to look at this, continuing this process. I think it was a really excellent way for us to kind of authentically engage with each other's research interests in a real productive manner. So I could see, I need more time personally to think through some of the connections and continue to build on the ideas, but I really appreciate the structure of the activity and the way we could all engage with each other. Was really positive.
Shout out to Clarin and Henry in particular for their work on structuring this. I agree, it was really cool. I want to do something like this with other groups too, to see how it goes. Thank you.
Betty and everyone. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
No, please, Amy. I'll go after you.
I was just going to say one of the things that I appreciated about the space today was the equitable approach that you used for us to introduce ourselves to one another. We didn't lead with titles. We didn't lead with job descriptions. We led with what are you interested in and what are you currently exploring in your practice? And I think oftentimes as clinical faculty, we're not able to lead with that kind of ideas. And so I just really appreciated that PD move. I don't know, whoever's designing these spaces. I like that.
Thank you. Yes. And we do want to find ways to continue to involve everyone on this more equitable basis, not by rank, title, or et cetera, but really what you're committed to. I mean, I know personally that's what really motivates me now, are those larger commitments. You know, why are we doing what we're doing? So thanks for that comment, Amy. Steve.
Just to echo some of the compliments already, I really felt it was a disruptive event and took me out of the kind of habitual ways I think about questions or research, and to work with others and their perspectives. I think that's probably intentionally designed here, but it really worked well for me. Some of the flavors that I really liked were the idea that none of this was specifically research-led, meaning it's driven by a particular question, but by relationships and networks and how the design reaches into our socially embedded agendas, which I think is a really strong feature of our college, especially when I go to the social embeddedness conference here at ASU. I think we could have our own social embeddedness conference, which I think picks up on a point somebody said as well. Like, so we have all these partnerships, this was Ruth's point. We have all these partnerships, they all take a lot of time, and how do we leverage these in ways that are sustaining and growing, building momentum rather than dying when the grant funding ends. And ASU invested in Collaboratory, which is an online platform for making our partnerships visible. I don't know if anybody's used it. It's not easy to use, in my opinion, but it's an example I just wanted to point at in relation to Ruth's, because I wonder how we make our connections visible, and making them visible, how can we make them matter more for agendas like this? Thank you.
I'm gonna jump in. So it reminds me, Steve, it's a great point. So I've been working with this assistant principal at a high school for years on a project. And so she emailed me at the beginning of the semester and was like, when can my students come and participate in this? And I was like, oh, that grant's over. But it would be, I'm sure that there's someone else where like, so they're gonna come and like field trip here, which is gonna be fun. But I'm sure that she just wants her students to come to ASU and experience being part of a research study. As far as I could tell, she didn't really care what they were doing. I mean, she wants it to be a good experience, all these things, but like, that's a great example. So right now we're setting up a field trip to maintain that relationship, because I'm sure we're going to do it in the future. But like, this is also a plug that if anyone needs a group of really great middle school students, like between 15 and 20 of them in March, assuming the superintendent allows for field trips again, they're already planning on coming here. So if there's anything you need, reach out, because I might be able to work in your activity or pilot into what they're already planning on doing. But great carry on, Steve.
Yeah, and great example of something that I think we all would really love. You know, in my work with doctoral students, it's just been really hard if I don't have a partnership to help them connect with other schools, organizations. And I know they're out there. I know people are working with them, but we do need that way to make those more visible. And again, I mean, hopefully that's something we could also build into these, what we're calling LFCs, Learning Features Collaboratives. So Carl has his hand up. Carl, do you want to share?
Yeah, just real briefly, in terms of sort of taking what Steve said about making connections visible, I appreciated and was struck by how just in those 2 quick sessions, we saw and began to explore potential alignments, both locally and globally, in thinking about together and exploring equitable and engaging, you know, applied kinds of pedagogies in the context of policies and systems that are either enabling or constraining, and how we can think about that together, even in 2 sessions. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, it's exciting, Carl, isn't it? I mean, we actually share a lot of values and concerns and don't even know it because we don't talk with people across different contexts. So if it came out in these short conversations, imagine what might happen if we had more time. Just a quick call out. I noticed in the chat Tara Bartlett's announcement about her team's award for social embeddedness. That's totally awesome. Congratulations, Tara and team. And I think I've run out of time for the debrief. Clarin is such a taskmaster, but I think we need to move on to next steps. So next steps, Tara, Clarin, Punya, I'm not sure who's talking first next,
ahead,
but thank you all. And please put more in the comments. I mean, I so appreciate all the feedback, positivity, and the ideas. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Betty. And I appreciate everyone's feedback too on this session. And I am going to kick it over to Iveta for next steps, but really, hope this exercise was helpful for going forward, right? I think if nothing else, it's excited you all and ignited you to think about, okay, I could now approach somebody and potentially think about ways we could connect and work together. Iveta, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah, so here's a really quick preview of some of the things to come very quickly. So we will have a second event in the series of these Learning Futures collaboratives on February 14th, and it will be this connection to the global discussions about the learning futures. But we really hope that whatever we begin discussing today will be an opportunity to then explore more in the global context as well. So we'll have a roundtable with some of the people who contributed to UNESCO's Futures of Education panel, including David Edwards, who is a General Secretary of Education International, which is a global union of teacher unions. So it should be a really interesting conversation, and some other people. And I will give Ruth Wiley a minute to talk about the Anticipation Conference, which will be happening here at ASU, and Ruth is on the planning committee, and it actually is a really awesome opportunity also for us to engage with other colleagues at ASU and outside in that context. So maybe Ruth, you can tell a couple of words.
I love your pup. I love that that's happening for you right now. It's bringing me a lot of joy. Thanks for the opportunity. As Iveta mentioned, the Anticipation Conference is going to be held at ASU in November of this year. It's the first time that this conference is going to be held in North America. And so we are trying to let people know that this is a thing. It's the fourth time in total that it's happened. The conference is very broad and interdisciplinary, with a focus on bringing people together to share research and scholarship and ideas around foresight and futures and anticipation. And perhaps this is obvious given the work that I do, but I think that education needs to be a strong focus of the work that's happening here. So would love to encourage as many people who can to apply. Quick FAQs, because this is the question that we're getting from everyone right now, is this, will there be an online component? You'll see this on the sheet. We hope to have an in-person event, but of course, even folks that study anticipation have no idea if that is going to be something that is possible. So we are also planning for online experiences and figuring out how to do convening safely. And yeah, Pamela?
You're muted.
Sorry, could you tell us a little bit about what kind of abstract you would submit to this conference?
Yeah, so there's definitely more info on the website, but there's a couple of different types of categories, and as you can see, we're also pretty open. So it's pretty short abstract. It asks for you to identify whether it's more of a talk or more of a panel or some other type of event. But if you have ideas and you're not sure it fits, I'd be happy to talk with you and help figure how to shape it so that it speaks to this broader community. But again, I see that there's a lot of a strong role that education plays in this work, and would love to see as many of you there as possible. We are working actively to try and secure sponsorships to support students' work. So if the registration is the reason why you're not applying, let me know and we can see what we can do to support you.
That's awesome, Ruth. Thank you so much. And we really hope that we can get some conversations around education more broadly at this conference too. So let's try to make that happen. I think that would be exciting. Then on February 25, we have the TCDC Educational Research Conference. So we just wanted to remind everybody and encourage everybody to attend and take part and support our students and each other. March 15th, we have a panel on writing for different audiences. The third session with Cronkite. And sometime in March, we will send out a call for proposals to support the Learning Future collaborative groups. And the idea is that these awards will be done prior to the end of the spring semester so that some funding is already available over the summer. So this was really just the beginning of the conversation, and we look forward to more. And maybe Punya, over to you.
Thank you, Yvette, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Can we go back to the previous slide, Clarin? Thank you. So, we've just a quick mention, really exciting about the Futures of Education UNESCO panel that Yvette, Anne, and others have worked really hard to put together. I think there's some amazing people in that panel. And in fact, we'll be reaching out to all of you to write sort of possibly short responses. We see this as being part of the Learning Futures podcast. So there's a whole array of activities that will be happening in between these events. I think that's sort of important to highlight as well. Want to thank everybody who came for the sessions we have already had around writing or communicating with different audiences. David Garcia's session went really well. The next one is people from MLFTC speaking about their personal experience in writing for wider audiences. So there's a whole series and array of things happening. And I really think that if we can build out of these conversations collectively, small groups writing something for the anticipation conference, that would be just a way of sort of getting our ideas going, and it's sort of a low risk sort of a proposal that you need to write. But again, I think really the important thing is that by March, we would love to have smaller groups who have identified topics that they see could be funded and supported as a part of this collaboratives, right? That would make sure that the work that we do, the setting up that we are doing starting today, would sort of culminate in some actual work that we can do and the kind of support that we can as a college provide for that work. Clarin, did you have any final thoughts you wanted to add?
Just to thank everybody, I do want to mention the listserv. We're going to hopefully get up and running, and then a reminder that we will share out all of these resources with you. Hopefully you have the links, but we know that there's other people who couldn't be here today that will want to hear about this, what happened. So thank you guys for taking your time to be here. We hope it excites you to approach your colleagues or think about different ways you can engage in some partnerships. And wouldn't it be wonderful if one of these ideas you came up with today could lead to an actual project that you connect and work with others on? So that is it. Punya, you want to add anything about the website?
If you go to the Learning Futures or education.asu.edu website, the work that we're doing here will start getting featured. That it's not there yet, but you'll see there's a whole variety of different things that have happened. Excuse me, sort of setting us up here. Of course, subscribe to the Learning Futures podcast, and and just keep these conversations going. We are here to support in any which way that we can. As Carol said, these sort of intellectual communications conversations, which to me are the heart and soul of why we are in this job in the first place. And I always often feel that, I don't have enough of those. And so I really appreciate all of you joining in today. And all of us look forward to continuing this work, expanding this work, and building on it. So thank you again. Have a great weekend. And do not hesitate to get in touch. If you have an idea, a thought, a question, a concern, we are here to help in any which way that we can.